I'm Ramon, and this is the For Real News on the Bold Like a Leopard channel.
It's breathtaking to me that Princeton University, one of the top universities in the world, an Ivy League school, employs somebody like Norman Finkelstein, somebody who's so dishonest and so conceited when it comes to a singular topic that he will basically lie as many times as he can within a 1.5 minute clip. Now, I guess the Real News edited it down so it would be convenient for us. Maybe in the whole video they elaborate on some of the crap that he says, but I can send you the video link. He does say this crap, and you don't have to be that smart to identify some of the real factual errors that he shoehorns into this small segment.
Now it will say is that it's no longer the occupying power because it withdrew, but instead of getting peace from Gaza, all it's gotten is rocket fire and attacks.
Israel didn't withdraw from Gaza, and with all due respect to you, it didn't disengage from Gaza. It redeployed.
That it wasn't really a withdrawal, it was a redeployment. Well, that's not really what the United Nations said. That's not what the world community said. In fact, Ibrahim Gambari, the Undersecretary General for Political Affairs, told the Security Council on August 24, 2005, that for its part, Israel has demonstrated that it has the requisite maturity to do what would be required to achieve lasting peace. And the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, has demonstrated their ability to discharge their mission with carefully calibrated restraint. Prime Minister Sharon should be commended for his determination and courage to carry out the disengagement in the fact of forceful and strident internal opposition. I think he meant the face.
Hamas, as the narrative says, continued firing rockets at Israel. It's just not true. What happened was the day after Israel completed its withdrawal, Hamas fired a couple of victory rockets, celebrating the end of what they call the end of the occupation. Here I'm referring to Hamas.
Okay, let's talk about celebratory rockets. Human Rights Watch says that Palestinian armed groups fired about 2,700 Qassam-type rockets from September 2005 through May 2007. The Palestinian groups characterized the rocket attacks as measures taken in response to Israeli abuses committed against Palestinians. Because the Palestinian groups fire these weapons at populated areas and the rockets are too inaccurate to aim at military targets with any degree of precision, the attacks violate the international humanitarian law prohibitions against attacks that target civilians or are indiscriminate. Furthermore, the groups that have launched rocket attacks from locations close to populated areas in which they failed to take all feasible precautions to protect civilians under their control against the effects of the attacks, including by not deploying military targets near densely populated areas. So who are you to decide, Finkelstein? The UN says it was a withdrawal, and Human Rights Watch says it was a little more than celebratory gunfire, 2,700 rockets. So how do you explain yourself?
Of the occupation, here I'm referring to Hamas. Israel faced a peace offensive. The PLO, under the leadership of Yasser Arafat, was behaving too reasonably. He accepted the two-state settlement of the conflict, and then Israel feared the international reaction. Israel doesn't want to negotiate, not because it thinks they don't want a two-state settlement. They don't want to go to the negotiating table because they fear that it does want it.
It doesn't help that Israel has never said we will recognize a Palestinian state in all the occupied territories.
They never will. I should add, there is the unfortunate legacy. The PLO and then the Palestinian Authority, they did accept two states, and they got nothing for it. So then Hamas thinks, why should we do the same thing and get nothing for it?
I'm sorry, Dr. Finkelstein, are you in the time warp? Is this the Rocky Horror Picture Show? Because according to NPR, Chairman Arafat died on November 11, 2004, which was a full 9 months before the Gaza withdrawal, as already demonstrated in the previous segment. So I believe you're trying to test the space-time continuum in order to prove your point, but I don't believe that really makes sense in the academic world that you live in. Okay, how about the whole assertion that Yasser Arafat accepted the two-state solution? Well, how about this report from 1994? On May 17th of that year, Arafat said in a speech in English in South Africa to a number of mosque attendants over there, "You have to come and fight jihad to liberate Jerusalem, your third shrine. Jihad will continue. Jerusalem is not just for the Palestinian people, it is for the Muslim nation." Then he goes on to say, "I insisted before signing to have a letter from the Israelis that Jerusalem is one of the items which has to be under discussion. You saw me on TV when I was hesitating. It was because I was insisting on mentioning Jerusalem. It is not their capital, it is our capital. It is your capital. It is the third shrine of Islam." Okay, so maybe you could make the argument, well, he did accept the two-state solution. Maybe he didn't accept that the Jews have any right to Jerusalem, but he did accept the two-state solution. Well, what they left out was this other stuff that Arafat said during that speech.
This agreement, I'm not considering it more than the agreement which had been signed between our Prophet Muhammad and Quraysh. And you remember, Khalifa Umar had refused this agreement and considering it sulh al-daniyya, but Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam had accepted it, and we are accepting now this peace accord.
The treaty that Muhammad was referring to, Hudaybiyah, which was signed in 628, was never intended to be a long-term peace between the Muslim community under Muhammad of Medina and the pagan community of Arabs in Mecca. In fact, it only lasted for about 2 years, after which the Muslim tradition, Islamic tradition, claims that the pagans violated the treaty and eventually led to the conquest of Mecca. So what Arafat's really talking about is, oh, I don't really believe that there's going to be a two-state solution. We're signing this treaty now, and eventually we're just going to end up taking over the entire country. So Finkelstein is very generous in claiming that Arafat accepted the two-state solution. It was always a real game as far as the Palestinian leader was concerned. So what have we established from that minute-and-a-half video by Finkelstein? A, he thinks that the Israelis didn't withdraw from Gaza, even though the UN does. He thinks that the rocket attacks were celebratory, even though there were 2,700 over a 2-year period after the withdrawal. He thinks that Arafat accepted the two-state solution, even though he talked about the Muslim conquest of Jerusalem, Al-Quds, as well as talking about it as if it was the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, which was an agreement that was eventually nullified by the Prophet Muhammad. So I want to ask him honestly, why does Princeton keep you around? Why can't they find a guy who has a concept of chronology, and space-time, and can actually hold people accountable? There are people who do criticize Israel with fair and balanced ideas. Sticks, Hexenhammer 666, for example, who many of you probably watch. But Finkelstein, get it together, bro.